Today, we are here to brief you and answer your questions about the status of the patients who were affected by yesterday's incident. We are grateful that one of them is with us here today to tell you about his experience and how he is doing. We will hear in a moment from Professor William Clark, an emeritus professor in the Ohio State University College of Engineering. We appreciate you being here, Professor Clark. But first, we have Dr. Andrew Thomas, who we heard from yesterday, the Chief Medical Officer of the Ohio State University, who is going to share an update. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you, Chris. My name is Andrew Thomas. I'm Chief Medical Officer for the Ohio State University Wexner Medical Center. I have an update on a handful of items that we discussed yesterday at the press briefings. One of our patients who spent the night in the hospital, one of the 4 patients has been discharged. That's our professor who is sitting next to me. There are still 2 patients hospitalized over up 315 at Riverside Methodist Hospital, and then 1 other patient hospitalized here at the OSU Wexner Medical Center. They are all doing well. I've communicated either in person or by phone with the majority of the individuals, and everyone still continues to be healing, obviously working through the trauma of yesterday's events. But at this point, we're just thankful that there appear to be no life-threatening injuries, and we expect all the individuals to make a full recovery. Be happy to take any questions, or would you like to turn things over to the professor, Chris, at this point?
I think let's hear from Professor
Chris?
Clark first.
Perfect.
Oh, yes. My name's William Clark. I'm a professor of material science and engineering, which is housed in Watts Hall and the McQuaig complex where the incident took place. I actually had taught a class a little bit down the road in Evans Lab from 8 to 9. I'd gone back to my office in Watts Hall, and as one does at that time of day, made coffee, and just started it when our building fire alarm went off. So everybody exited the building. It turned out it was a gas leak in some equipment in one of the research laboratories. So everybody was standing outside. The Columbus Fire Department turned up. The Columbus Police Department, I think, came with them as well. And firemen in the full gear and breathing apparatus went in to check on this leak. After about 20 minutes, the firemen came out, and that's usually a sign that they cleared the building and it's about time to go in. I began to walk back a little bit east on West 19th towards the back entrance of Watts Hall there, which fronts onto that street. And as I was walking, I suddenly heard a shout, and then this tremendous crash. And it was a silver car, the perpetrator's car, that had mounted the curb and hit a large, well, you saw them probably, one of those large concrete planters on the curb and bounced off. And that did enough damage to stop the car, and as it was stopping, so I was there and a little bit dazed and figuring how to get up. And meanwhile, the perpetrator had exited the vehicle on the other side, the road side, which was his driver's side, and had begun to attack the students. And there was a lot of noise and a lot of shouting. However, I got up, and with a number of students and some others, started to make progress towards the building, to get in the building and hide. And even as I was doing that, before I could get to the back end of the building, which was only probably 20 yards away, I heard the 3 shots that presumably were the ones that Officer Hushko fired that took down the assailant. That was it. I went down into the basement of the building, which of course I know very well. Okay, which I know very well, and sat there, and one of the students with me said, "Oh, you're bleeding." And I said, "Yeah, well, I've got a little blood." No, he said, "No," and there were footprints of blood all the way down the hall. So at that point, they called one of the emergency, I think it was in the fire department, emergency technicians. They came down, and they were fortunately already on the scene. And I was taken from there and transported to OSU Medical Center, where I was extremely well looked after. So I've just been discharged this afternoon. So and that's why I have yellow socks on and walking a little slowly. So what I usually do. No, I never heard the assailant say anything. First of all, my injuries, I say I've got had two deep lacerations down here just above the right ankle towards the back. Those were closed in the operating theater in the trauma center. And I also have some severe contusions down the left-hand side of the left leg, which they were concerned might possibly be a fracture in the tibia or fibia. And because of the amount of swelling, they couldn't really determine and see the fracture until sometime today. So they have fortunately determined there is no fracture there, but it's sort of swollen and bruising. So I am extremely apart from the leg trauma, obviously you don't do all these rib muscles and everything else much good when you get shot up into the air like that. So actually more inconvenient is I'm really sore and stiff in the ribs and back. When the car hit me, I didn't really know what to think. I thought, well, maybe this is a traffic accident. But then there were people started shouting immediately, and I couldn't hear what they said, but it was like panic shouting. So obviously, at that point, I figured out it was more than just a car accident. Yeah. I think that I'm not entirely sure. I think the two cuts in the leg were actually from the vehicle. I think the vehicle hit the planter, which basically destroyed much of the front end. And my impression is that it left a lot of open, jagged metalwork there, and it was that sliced the back of my leg. And they're two parallel cuts, about 4 or 5 inches long. Yeah. I wasn't. It happened so fast. I turned to go back in the building, and all of a sudden, this bang and this car's there, and I get flipped in the air, and it all happens so fast. I mean, say literally, at least it seemed to me. Maybe the time frame is a little compressed, but it seemed to me literally within 15 to 30 seconds, I heard the shots, and it was over. And I didn't look around. I saw, I think, one other student who was hit by the car and flipped up in the air. He was lying on the ground, but I didn't see any of the people who were stabbed because they were off to my side. Well, I think I at this stage, until we really know all the facts, I prefer to hold judgment. He was an OSU student. He was from Somalia, but he's an OSU student. And having been a faculty member for 35 years, I'm only too aware of the things that drive students sometimes to do things that they wouldn't ordinarily do. And so, before I pass judgment on this young man, I would like to see exactly what the circumstances are and exactly why he took the course of action that he chose to. And in the end of the day, as I said earlier, I mean, I'm sore, but I'm going home this afternoon, and he's dead. So I think, my sense is, out of respect just for the living and the dead, that we should wait until we know exactly what the truth is. Sorry? Oh, I'm happy to go in there. In fact, my wife drove me there. I parked outside today. My colleagues were in a faculty meeting, and I don't feel that the Watts Hall itself wasn't threatened. This was a street accident and a street incident, and it was just unfortunate that because of this completely unrelated fire alarm, there were a lot of people out there. It was also, in my view, very fortunate that he hit this big concrete planter, because that had not been there, and he'd have ridden up on the curve, he would have plowed into 40 or 50 people. So. I think it's very sad. I think it's very tragic, and something like this happens at any university. I mean, I decided on a career in universities because, I think there's some sort of calling there. You're taking young people at 17, 18, and you're trying to turn them into functional adults, and that doesn't just mean you train them in the classroom. You're also trying to show them how to live life. And so whenever anything like this happens, I think it's absolutely tragic. I mean, it's tragic for the people who are hurt. It's tragic for the young man's family and relatives, you know, if they weren't implicated in anything sinister. So I think it's very, very sad. I think it's sad, especially on university campuses of all places, because those are the one places where, you know, you feel that young people should be safe. I think he got out of the car after he crashed. So I heard the crash, and then I was on the ground just trying to get up, and there was sort of little chaos here, and I was on the driver's side of the car facing towards the rear, and he got out of the driver's side. I was out on the passenger side. He got out of the driver's side on the other side, and that's where he started attacking people out towards the street. So all I heard was the shouting and the screaming from the people standing there. I didn't hear him say anything at all. No, I didn't. Well, I might have done, but I wasn't aware of separating him from. There were a lot of people around on the street, and I say by the time the gunshots, I heard the gunshots. I think he'd taken off well down 19th Avenue. No, I think he was a business major. I'm an engineering major. It just so happened that you know, whether he was even in that building at all, because he drove along College and turned down there. So he needn't have had any business or any affiliation with anything that went on in there, even though some of the classrooms in there are what we call pool classrooms, which are shared by all kinds of disciplines across the university. So no, I'd never seen him before. You know, to be honest, I mean, that was a kind of screaming, but I couldn't put my finger on any specific sentence that anybody said. But sure, yeah, it sounded like people screaming because they felt threatened by somebody who was armed in some way. Yeah. Well, sure. I mean, you know, like I said before, I think I would like to see what all the circumstances are that led to him doing this, and all the history that led up to it. I mean, whether there's an implication with stresses at school or with colleagues, because, you know, he graduated from Columbus State, I think, in the spring, and the picture of the graduation show this jubilant young man. And so to do this for happen 4 or 5 months later, yes, I would be very interested to know what all the circumstances were. But yeah, I'm a professor, I'm a research professor, so I like to make my guesses based on data, I'm afraid. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to speculate on whether he did or whether he didn't. I mean, there are all kinds of ways that something like that could happen if it did, but you know, until we find out, I think that, you know, the FBI and the Columbus Police and so on, are much better place to do that than me. Well, I mean, I get, you know, anybody can take responsibility for anything if they want, if they see it as a feather in their cap, I think. So I don't think that, to me, that doesn't necessarily imply that they were behind the planning or whatever. No, because I don't, until I know that whether it was, in fact, behind it, till I know that this wasn't something to do with some radical group, and whether that is the entire story, or whether there's some other personal and family issues and social issues behind it, you know, I would hold judgment and not make a... I went down, we went into the building in Watts, down into the basement. A lot of rooms in the basement, which I know very well. So probably 20 yards or so. And, you know, my legs were sore, but I didn't have any particular pain. I was surprised to see the cut. And I was even more surprised to see the footprints. But it bled a lot. Yep. Yeah. He just kind of took the, you know, it's like somebody taking your legs out from under you. Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, you know, I have a group of students. The class I'm teaching is a group of our students, and Many of them were standing there when this took place. And so, I'm supposed to meet with them tomorrow. And I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but I've canceled that class. And I think when we meet on Friday, just to give them a little time to adjust to it, because some of them, I saw some of them were extremely distraught. And I think we may talk a little bit about it on Friday in class to open it up. But, I just hope people realize that horrible as this is, this is one of these isolated incidents. We're an enormous community at Ohio State. We're 50, 60,000. And it's terrible when something like this happens on a university campus. And, university campuses are vulnerable to that kind of thing because we are an open society so that young people can grow up and learn and make a certain amount of makes mistakes as part of growing up under controlled conditions. So I would tell them, we're still a great university. We still beat Michigan. And, we'll go to the national championship. We're still in the top 20 in the university rankings in the country. And this isn't going to change it. I've thought about that. It turns out my daughter knows him from a friend who's similar age. To me, if he was here, I'd put my arm around him and tell him he's got a lot to cope with in the days to come. He's got to live with this for the rest of his life. But he did the right thing. That's what he was trained to do, and that's what he did. And who knows? It was a lot of people walking around between classes. Who knows what other damage this young man would have done? And my understanding is that he was challenged 3 times to put the knife down and advance towards the officer, and I don't think he had much choice.
Okay, one more question. Can you talk about the emotional physical part of this and the emotional part of this? How difficult is it for them?
Yeah. Well,
I think that's a great question. I know we discussed this a little bit at some of the events yesterday. The event that Chris mentioned that's this evening is, I think, a part of that healing of trying to bring the community together with student leaders, faculty leaders, administrators, and staff leaders to make those next steps towards healing. Sometimes this is something that time helps with, but then obviously there are other times when people need additional help, whether that's counseling, time off, whatever it may be. So actually a large part of what I've spent doing in my day today is working with our folks in the Office of Student Life, doing outreach to the students that were involved on the incident, making sure that they understand the counseling services that are available. We've been working with, for the students that were injured, working with their professors, getting them out of exams, getting them out of classes, those sorts of things, and making sure that notification goes out. It is something that time will help, but I think probably in some ways the entire university will be changed by this in some ways. But I think over time, much like any of these crises that occur, it gets better over time, but it really gets better because we work together. We are a city within a city, I like to call it. We have over 50,000 students and tens of thousands of faculty and staff embedded in a city of well over 1 million people. And we are used to coming together. We've had other tragedies on campus in the past, whether it was students or faculty or staff, and I think this is certainly a very different one, but this is something I'm quite confident that we will be resilient and be fine down the road. Well, I think I'd probably leave it to the law enforcement folks to talk about that. All I'm aware of is what has been discussed in the press. I think certainly, thankfully, the individual didn't have a gun. I think is probably the one thing that's a blessing. It allowed the officer to act before he was able to injure anyone more severely than he did. Also, I think thinking about other venues and things on campus where we have large groups of people, I think this was obviously something that was a unique opportunity with students standing on the sidewalk. I do have a statement actually to read. One of the students who was injured has given us a written statement that she asked to have read at this press conference. This is from an undergraduate student by the name of Katie Schultz. It's spelled S-C-H-U-L-T-Z. First name, Katie, K-A-T-I-E. Quote, "My family and I appreciate everyone's concern about my well-being. Right now, I'm focused on my recovery, and my family is providing me with the support and love that I need during this difficult time. We're thankful that I was not seriously injured, and we thank emergency responders for ending the situation as quickly as possible. We request privacy and are declining all media requests for interviews. And that's the end of the statement.
Really appreciate you guys coming in today. We do not.
I don't have that information.
We don't have that information at this time.
So the student I read the statement for? Oh, Professor.
Clark, C-L-A-R-K.
No, there's a number of different reports out there about what exactly occurred. It still remains confidential.
The patient's been discharged. I'll stay with Chris's comment. It's still being actively investigated by the police.
Okay, thanks you guys.
So from the 11 victims, 3 are hospital.
Correct. 3 are still in the hospital, 1 here and 2 at Riverside. The rest have all been discharged.
Thank you.
It's the rolling chair.